U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is taking aim at Canada's role in CUSMA. It's raising questions about how a looming review of that deal might unfold.
They got a digital tax in Canada. They try to tax our tech companies. What happened to USMCA? I tell you what happened to it. The Canadians like to cheat.
Well, that's his take. A senior government source tells CTV News U.S. President Donald Trump raised grievances with CUSMA, or USMCA as it's known in the States, for not officially, although it's not up officially for review until 2026. During his phone call with the Prime Minister that we know happened yesterday, lasted 50 minutes. For more on what ongoing talks could look like, we've reached out to Ian Lee, Associate Professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. He's in Ottawa this morning. Welcome back to the show.
My pleasure, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
You have said whatever deal comes out of CUSMA, renegotiations would cover more areas than just trade. First of all, why is that the case?
Well, I think this is an opportunity. Several people have said this. You know, David Rosenberg has said this. Kevin Lynch, the former clerk of the Privy Council, has said this. There's other analysts saying this, that paradoxically, and bizarre as it may sound, Donald Trump has presented us with an opportunity. Yes, he's a threat. The tariffs are a mortal threat, but it's an opportunity to address the very serious structural problems in our economy that has been studied for 30, 40 years, our collapsing productivity, which was summarized so brilliantly by the Deputy Governor last spring, Ms. Rogers, in her famous speech, "Time to break the glass." And so this is an opportunity to deal with those problems. And, Anne-Marie, I think that because of Donald Trump's daily criticism of the border with, okay, false information. We know that there's all kinds of fentanyl and so forth. But I think that this, a new CUSMA, and I believe that's the only ramp off of this crisis, is through CUSMA negotiations. It's going to be more than a trade agreement. It's going to be really a treaty of the complete relationship between the United States. It's going to have to encompass illegal immigration. Who are illegal immigrants? How do we deport them? How do they deport them? Illegal drugs going both ways. Remember, drugs are coming in illegally from the States to Canada, too. Yeah. There's huge handguns coming in, illegal handguns coming into Canada. So I think that this is the chance to set the most, it'll be truly unprecedented, such an agreement. It'll be more than a trade agreement.
We just heard Lutnick, and this is from earlier in the week, criticize Canada's digital sales tax. But we know that there are other grievances that have been brought up with the president in the Oval Office. What is the U.S. likely to raise in these renegotiations?
I think, and I'm puzzled by the number of people in Canada saying they don't have a clue what he wants. I mean, we've known for he's been unbelievably clear, and it long predates Donald Trump. If one looks at the United States Trade Rep annual report to Congress, very public document, anybody can Google it and download it, from the Clinton years. That was a third of a century ago. And every report since has talked about our supply management, our telecom bill that keeps out foreign telecom, which means Verizon and AT&T, restrictions on foreign banking, which means American banking in the Bank Act. I know it doesn't preclude them, but there are certain separate restrictions on them, on airlines, the digital service tax. And so when you look at the list, it's very transparent. It's very clear what they're going to be demanding, along with strengthening the border and along with increasing 2%, the spending on military to 2%. So I think that's going to be broadly the outline of the negotiations for a new CUSMA.
On Wednesday, I imagine you heard this as well, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly compared the uncertainty that we've all been living through with these Trump tariffs to a psychodrama. I thought that was really apt. What would Canada be looking for in this renegotiated CUSMA to prevent a similar situation from happening again? Keeping in mind that these are rules that Donald Trump originally ripped up, helped Canada to rewrite, signed off on them, and now he wants to change them again.
Anne-Marie, you have put your finger on what I believe is going to be the most difficult part. Even though I've spelled this out and said, you know, it's straightforward, you know, this and this and that, I think it's going to be the most challenging and difficult agreement that our country has ever negotiated. I'm not being histrionic. I mean, we have a partner who is quite willing to rip up trade agreements, including the one he negotiated in 2000 or signed off on in 2017. So I think that, well, we can see the broad outlines of what will be negotiated. I think the sticking point, the most controversial part in the court of public opinion will be the negotiation of some kind of a guarantee whereby the American side will promise to honor the agreement, and if they abrogate that promise, there will be some kind of penalties or restrictions on them to discipline them. And that, I think, is going to be the most difficult part because of the lack of trust, understandably, amongst Canadians from the leadership down to the bottom.
Right, because if you ripped up the rules before, what's to say you're not going to do it again? The last agreement took a long time to renegotiate. How long could this version take, considering that we've moved up the timeline from these discussions from 2026 to now?
Absolutely correct. I am convinced he wants this Trump wants this well before the off-year elections, which is fall of 26, because he wants to have a huge victory, a huge get that he can brag about and say, I took on the Canadians, I solved the problem of the border and the drugs and so on. And so I don't think this will be wrapped up in 2 or 3 months, but I think it'll be wrapped up well before the midterm elections in fall 26 to resolve this, and that will be in our self-interest as a country.
Quickly, one last question. We've talked a lot about Canada and the U.S. in negotiating, but CUSMA and both NAFTA included Mexico. So how does that change our negotiations?
Well, it's going to make it even more complex. There's more people at the table. There's more trade-offs that have to be made. Although, to be fair, I think Mexico's in a very similar boat. I realize their economy is different, and but Trump is putting the tariffs on both countries, and he's making similar accusations against both countries. So I think that's why I said the border and negotiations over how to toughen up the border, strengthen the border, thicken the border, whatever word we use, is going to be key for both the Mexican government and the Canadian government, because it's constantly talked about by President Trump.
It will be interesting to see if the rules change enough that there then becomes 2 separate deals, where Canada and the U.S. have one and the U.S. and Mexico have another. I have to let you go, Ian Lee, but I could talk to you all day long. Thanks so much for joining us from Ottawa this morning.
My pleasure, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.